I'm Jamie of Pandora Astrology, and with me is...
Hey guys, this is Julia Migos, and I'm joining in from San Francisco today.
And I'm in Berkeley, California. And I wanted to tell you today about something really important, which is the pandemic hot degree, 22 degrees of Capricorn, the place where Pluto and Saturn met in January of 2020. This is giving the whole year of 2020 this overarching feeling of that we live in oppressive circumstances. And there's a lesson embedded in this, which I described in my previous video, which I think is called The Lesson of the Pandemic Hot Degree. And the lesson is, how can we face things that are too big for us, beyond our control? And how can we do so responsibly? How can we take responsibility for them and do so gracefully and graciously? Now, this is going to land in everybody's chart in a different and unique spot. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what it might mean for you in the house that it falls in your chart. And we're going to show you how to track that in a minute. But before I do that, I want to explain a little bit more about why this degree is so hot. So I think it was January 12th, Pluto and Saturn met up in 22 degrees of Capricorn, and that day there were three other planets also in 22 degrees of Capricorn, either at the time or within a few hours later. And they were the Sun, Ceres, and Mercury. So it's an extremely hot degree. A hot degree is formed when a big event like this happens, and then that degree will remain hot and triggerable until it expires. And it expires when one of those two planets, usually the faster moving one, leaves the sign that they met in. And in that case, in this case, it will be Saturn. And Saturn is actually already dipped forward out of Capricorn into Aquarius, and will, over the course of the year, retrograde back into Capricorn, get pretty darn close to Pluto, but without conjuncting it again, and then sail off into Aquarius and not connect with Pluto again for quite a while. And that happens in December. So this hot degree is hot all year. It's being triggered vociferously by Jupiter and Mars, and I think it's something that you need to know about. Yeah, let's see. Is there anything else in my notes here that I really want to tell you? So if you want to know the specific dates when there are likely to be triggers of this hot degree leading to surges in the pandemic, surges in fear among the populace, or anger among the populace, then check our video, The Astrology of the Coronavirus Pandemic, which you can find on our YouTube channel in our 2020 news playlist. Now, I've been putting this pandemic hot degree in the charts of my clients for about a month now, and really observing what they have to say about their experience with it, which has pretty much always been exactly what I would have thought. So when I place it into their charts, I find there are three different kinds of situations happening with my clients. One of them is, I place the pandemic hot degree and it introduces a lot of stress into the chart. It forms hard aspects like oppositions and squares to things in that person's chart, and they are super stressed out by it. And actually, I haven't seen a lot of those clients because I suspect they are too stressed out to even think that they could come to me for answers. Mostly, I'm seeing those charts because other people are bringing me those charts and saying, what the heck is up with my partner? Now, the second condition that I'm seeing in my actual clients, and I'm seeing quite a bit of this actually, is where I put in the pandemic hot degree and it introduces actually harmony. And these people are going to sail through the pandemic just fine, most likely. You know, I'm not predicting the future here specifically, but it seems like they're pretty much set up to actually benefit from the situation. And my message for those people is, don't feel guilty just because everybody around you is suffering and you, by the luck of the draw, are not. Instead, use your spare attention to help those around you who are struggling more than you are. And then the third condition that I'm seeing in my clients is where I put the pandemic hot degree in, it doesn't form really any aspects to anything in their chart. And these people, I call them running between the raindrops. There's a giant storm happening out there, and somehow none of the droplets are falling on them. So it's really useful to know which of these is the condition for your chart. If you want to find out more about it, you can get a reading with either Julia or me, and we'd be happy to show that to you. So now I think we should run through the houses. So let's do that. We have a chart right in front of us here that has Aries on the rise. And so the pandemic hot degree being in Capricorn, for most Aries risers, it will fall in their 10th house. Now, because houses are not regular, as they are drawn here, they're not regular, and they get more irregular the further away from the equator you were born, the further north or south of the equator. And so some people's house structures are very skewed, which means that you could have Aries rising and have the pandemic hot degree in either the 9th or the 10th houses. And that's also something that you can best find out about in a reading. But we're going to describe the 10th house position. And what you need to know is when we get to your rising sign, you might be having it in the house that we describe or in the house either side of that. Okay, so if the pandemic hot degree falls in your 10th house because you're an Aries riser, then you're going to experience this pandemic and the general mood of oppression and heaviness that is going on in the world right now, mostly in the arena of your career. And in your career, you might feel like you're dealing with a load of fear and with things that are beyond your control and that you would really like to control. However, this is the time for you to remember that serenity prayer that I spoke of in the previous video and really have the wisdom to know the difference between the things that you can control in your career and the stuff that you can't and you just need to accept or let go of. And that's how to find grace with it. Julia, what are your thoughts about a 10th house position of the pandemic hot degree?
Yeah, well, I loved everything you just said. I think also remember 10th house can also be a house of authority figures.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe if you're not in a career, maybe you're retired or maybe you're a student, then this could be a sense of authority figures kind of impressing themselves on you in a way that feels a bit beyond your control. 10th house is also the house of reputation. So you could feel like there are things beyond your control right now on how other people and maybe the community at large is viewing your place in the world. So yeah, it's also parental access too. So there might be, if one of your parents is still currently your authority figure, it could affect that area too. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when it comes to this degree and dealing with this Pluto-Saturn thing, you have to propitiate these planets. You have to pay honor to Pluto and to Saturn. Paying honor to Pluto means, you know, accepting that you don't control everything in the world, and paying honor to Saturn means taking responsibility and displaying integrity. And if you haven't been displaying integrity, well, this could be the time when that stuff erupts to the surface and makes a big fat mess. And how you respond really, really, really matters. Okay, so let's look at Taurus. And I want to take this stuff out of here. I'm trying to make a nice, you know what, heck with that. This chart has stuff in it, but don't worry about that. Just notice that Taurus is rising, and that means that Capricorn will generally fall in the 9th house. Although it might fall in the 8th or the 10th, it's most likely to fall in the 9th house. So the 9th house is the house of your belief system. It's the house of faith. It's the house of, Julia, I think you like to call it the higher mind. It has to do with education and your perspective, your worldview. It's also a house of travel and all things foreign. So this could mean that during this pandemic, your experience has to do with foreign places or foreign peoples. It might be connected with travel. It might be connected with those who feel culturally exotic to you. It might be connected with the view that you have on the world. and ways that that maybe has become rigid or calcified, or the ways that it has given you a sense of control, which now is revealed to be false. And so you're going to have to look at that, take that seriously, show some integrity, and I would think probably also introduce some flexibility. Julia, what do you think about this house?
Yeah. I mean, on a very mundane level, it could mean that forces beyond your control, either in an educational context, a legal context, a travel context, like you were planning a big trip and now there's just no way you can go on it, you know, and
Yeah.
it's sort of beyond your control no matter how many months you spent planning. So those could affect those areas as well. You know, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, I'm born 1984, so mine are about 15 degrees away from each other. They're not conjoined in my chart, but a lot of my classmen and women from 1983 had that conjunction in their chart. And I do notice there is a sense with those folks of a bit of like hidden ambition. Too, you know, like there's this drive to succeed, but they're not necessarily transparent about what they're working on, you know, what their projects. So perhaps there's a sense of this, you know, wanting to succeed in ninth house areas, maybe intellectual areas, maybe academic areas, but also being kind of hidden about that same desire too.
Or, you know, being very wedded to a set of beliefs and wanting to impose that upon other people.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, lots of thoughts there. Okay, let's look at the next sign, which is Gemini. There, I've got a Gemini rising chart here. And so that would mean that the pandemic hot degree most likely appears in the 8th house, although it might appear in the 9th or the 7th houses. The 8th house is a house of sharing, and sharing takes 3 forms. It's intimacy, really. So the 3 forms are physical sharing, which is your sex life, emotional sharing, which is emotional intimacy and trust, really, of other people. And then the 3rd form of sharing is financial, and that's where you pool your monies with the monies of another person or group, with the hopes that there will be some growth that comes from that. So this is a house that is really, what shall I say? It's like there's a lot of intense feelings in this house, right? We're talking about trust. This is a really, you know, deep arena, and so the pandemic hot degree landing here could really center in on those themes of trust, possibly betrayal. You may ask yourself, you know, why did I trust this person? And one of the things, and Pluto actually rules the 8th house, so it's pretty comfortable there. And one of the things about Pluto and the 8th house is that there's this tendency to go to extremes, to either trust like 100% or 0, you're dead to me, kicking you to the curb. And I would think that one really great way to respond to your experience of the pandemic in this house would be by finding some more balance and not going, not either just, just opening yourself up entirely to somebody, or just closing yourself off entirely, but finding a way to get to the middle ground, again, gracefully and graciously. Julia, what do you think?
Well, you know, again, the 8th house, when people say other people's money, that can be shared resources with a partner, but it can also include institutions as well. So there could, on a very mundane level, be this feeling of stress, this feeling of forces beyond your control, with maybe handling loans, debts, taxes, those types of things. And, you know, this is also the house of transformation. So it makes me think it could go either way. Maybe there's a sense that there's a transformation that you're trying to desperately make in your life and in your relationship, but there are kind of forces beyond your control preventing that, blocking that. Or maybe that there's transformation just coming in your life and you're trying to, you know, say, stop, I'm not ready, I don't want this change right now, and the change is coming.
Julia, do you think that this placement of the pandemic hot degree might be actually kind of good for therapy?
Oh my God, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it could really like bring up some painful stuff, but ultimately it might really wash you clean, and that could be pretty cool, especially if it then, sextiles some things that you have in late Scorpio, or in Pisces, yeah, that could be powerful and cleansing
Mm-hmm.
psychologically. Okay, so let's go to the sign Cancer. And when Cancer is rising, well, the pandemic hot degree is likely to show up in the seventh house, although it might be in the eighth or the sixth. And this is the house of partnership and all things fair. It's about balance. And this is ruled by Venus, goddess of love and beauty. She's also in charge of fine design. So this is pretty much saying that your experience of the pandemic and this atmosphere of things being beyond your control is probably going to land squarely in your relationship. Or if you don't have one, your lack of one. And it may cause you to really question why you don't have one or why you're in the one that you do. And that doesn't mean, and I want to be clear about this isn't necessarily just going to be a difficult experience. We all feel what we feel and then we react to it differently. These feelings of the discomfort of becoming aware that things are beyond your control, it's very human to react badly to that, but that doesn't mean you have to. So, if this lands in your seventh house, you may become aware of some aspects of your relationship that are beyond your control. Maybe because they are located inside your partner, and your partner may be out of control or out of your control. So, and of course, Saturn loves to be in this house. Saturn brings the weight of good judgment. Saturn brings grounding influence. Saturn brings a seriousness and level of commitment to this house. So if you propitiate Saturn, that would seem to be, probably the most important thing that you can do with this placement. Julia, what do you think?
I think you said it all really great. I would only add that the symbolism this house can also extend to any other partnerships you have.
True.
Maybe not currently in a relationship, but you have a business partner,
Yeah.
or maybe this could also affect any of the consultants that you seek out in your life too.
Yeah, and it might even feel like it harkens back to previous relationships, I would think.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, because Pluto is all about trauma,
Hmm.
and I would think that Pluto here, if you're having a transit of Pluto through your seventh house, that's a long-term era of transformation in your relationships, and that might really involve uncovering and releasing a lot of old relationship trauma.
Mm.
And then Saturn's saying, well, take responsibility for that. You attracted that abusive partner. What are you going to do differently next time?
Hmm.
Okay, so the next sign is Leo. And this places the pandemic hot degree in all likelihood in the sixth house, or possibly the fifth or the seventh. Now, the sixth is the arena of work, health, service, personal organization. It's your systems that make your life go, that you use on the job, or that your daily routines that you use around the house, how you manage paperwork and bills and that sort of thing. And so this, constituting a plutonic transformation in that area could be rather chaotic and messy. It could show you the cracks and the fissures in the systems that you've had. And then Saturn is saying, well, take responsibility for that. This is the house of health. And I think it's really important to shore up your health and pay attention to your health when something this big is happening in that house. And really, that's where propitiating Saturn is the thing to do, because Saturn says, well, take responsibility. You've been eating that artery hardening food for a really long time. Maybe you should stop. Maybe your smoking habit is going to, meet its final end in lung cancer. And, well, I shouldn't say things like that, but, this is a house of health, and it's so important to have your habits be healthy ones. And this pandemic could be the time when you discover that. Julie, what do you think about this house?
Sure. So it could be that there are, with the current environment of the pandemic, it's affecting your workplace. Lots of people I know are now having to work from home, and they don't have the usual systems that they're used to, and it can make work a lot more challenging and difficult, and progress harder. I could see that fitting the symbolism very well, that maybe there are changes in the work environment that are making it difficult to do what you usually do. Since it's also a house of habits and routines, maybe there's a sense of things beyond your control that are preventing you from, like, starting a good exercise routine. You've got a new baby. There's so many demands at work, and you just cannot find the time in the morning to just start your exercise routine, and do things that are supportive for health.
Yeah, it could really lead to a sense of overwhelm. And baby steps. Baby steps are really good, especially if you have a baby. Okay, let's pull Virgo. So Virgo places the pandemic hot degree in the 5th house, which is the house of creativity, and it's also the house of ego. It's the house of creation, recreation, and procreation. So it's creativity, creative process, and product, and that does include children. And it's a house of self-discovery. It's ruled by the sun. So it's about that process of figuring out who you are, and it can devolve into, a sort of an ego-stroking house. So when Pluto is traveling along through this house, Pluto does make those long-term transits that feel less like a transition and more like an era. And so Pluto moving through this house over time has been transforming your creativity and possibly transforming your relationship to yourself, which is to say, hopefully transforming your ego into a healthy form of pride and self-confidence. So if you have been full of bluster in the past, faking it till you make it, this is, Pluto's transit through this house is probably an era in which you must peel away the layers of phoniness and become more authentic. So Saturn's arrival in this house, joining up with Pluto, would suggest you must take responsibility for the cost of your big ego in the past, and you must use your integrity to do something good for everyone with the confidence that you can get now by rising to the occasion. Julia, what are your thoughts about this house? I didn't really speak to creativity.
Creativity, I think, yeah, exactly. Feeling maybe hidden ambitions with creativity, wanting to go out and accomplish. Oh, I just want to write that book. I just want to, display my work in a gallery, but now galleries are closed. That sense of maybe stymied, block creative inspiration and output. Challenges with kids or challenges with trying to make kids. As well as, since it's the house of recreation, not feeling that your usual outlet for fun is so available to you, or that there's some sort of stress associated with the things that you do to kind of, whether it's playing games, whether it's going out and seeing things, doing things, that there's a lot of contraction in there that's kind of not allowing that to flow as easily.
Yeah, this is a house of love affairs, come to think of it. Yeah. Okay, let's go with Libra. So Libra places the pandemic hot degree most likely in the 4th house, although it might be the 3rd or the 5th. And the 4th is the house of home, family, domestic life, heritage, and roots. And it's also the house of patriotism. It's the house of your connection to the land that you feel a sense of belonging to and rootedness in. And so this can bring up a lot of deep instinctive feelings about that. This can bring up a big sense of oppression around that. It can bring a feeling of limitation or constriction or restriction or even entrapment around that. And it might be time to reevaluate what is your relationship to your homeland and your family, and how do you relate to those things, and how do you be, the flower on your family tree? Julia, what are your thoughts about the 4th house here?
Sure. So yeah, family and home definitely fall under this arena with maybe stress, the feelings of forces beyond your control. This house is also the house of the deep inner psyche too.
Mm,
So maybe it doesn't even affect your domestic surroundings, but just there's like a heaviness and a stress in your mind that's just kind of not letting up so
mm,
easily right now.
mm,
This is also the house of the past. So it could be that you feel like something
mm.
from your way, way distant past is sort of emerging or having to do with the present right now, which is related to all those themes we just talked about.
Yeah, something that maybe you troweled over or just, moved beyond because other things started happening. It's the
Yeah.
house of mother too, and so this could show up in terms of your relationship with your mother, literally.
Mm,
And because it's the home, it could very much affect your home life. You could feel
yeah.
that sense of your home being beyond your control and the atmosphere in it being, beyond your control or even menacing. And so the thing to do is to take responsibility for that. Um, and I talked about responsibility and how you can take responsibility during, before, or after the fact. And we talked about that in the previous I think it was. I don't remember which one it was, but it's the previous one in the playlist, the 2020 news playlist. I think it's the lesson of the coronavirus pandemic. Okay, so let's go to Scorpio, which places this hot degree by and large in the third house. And the third house is a house of communication. It's a house of thinking, ideas. It's also on the more mundane level, a house of the people and situations that are right around you all the time, like roommates, housemates, your neighborhood, and the short-term travel that you do in that area. It's a house of siblings. Um, and so pandemic could really come down for you in terms of your ideas and your idea of your own intelligence and your learning process and how you think in general. It could transform how you think, how you learn, and the sorts of ideas that interest you. It could bring about a shift in your experience of the environment that you live in, the neighborhood that you live in, and the people that you choose to have around you on a regular basis. Julia, what do you think about this house?
Hmm. Well, the communications I think for Scorpio risings right now during
Mm,
this hot degree year that we're having might be a lot more stressful. That can be anything from your conversations, your emails, your text messages. There might just be something with how you're communicating with people and how they're expressing themselves to you that feels a bit beyond your control. Your local environment, your neighbors, the people in your everyday life. You might feel some more a sense of contraction and a sense of sort of stress from those areas too. And of course, this is the house of siblings, so if you have any, this could definitely manifest with them as well.
that's true. There's something occurring to me too, which is that there are some houses where it's more likely that the pandemic hot degree will harmoniously connect with your rising, and this is one of those. If you
Mm,
have Scorpio rising and the pandemic degree, hot degree is there in 22 degrees of Capricorn, it might form a sextile to your rising. And that might mean, for example, if it's in your third house, that while Scorpio risers are not usually known for their communication going smoothly, I think that a lot of Scorpio risers have difficulty finding the words to express all of the feels that move through their systems. But
mhm.
having the pandemic hot degree sitting there, if it is sextiling your rising, this could be a time when you really shine in your communication. And wouldn't that be fabulous? Hmm. Okay, so let's look at Sagittarius rising. That places the pandemic hot degree probably in the second house, which is the house of things that connect us to the physical world. I firmly believe that this house is ruled by the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt, and that is Ceres, the Earth Mother, because her themes line up really, really well with the themes of this house, much better than Venus in my mind. And so these themes are food, body, and money, wealth building, your relationship with your body, how comfortable are you in your skin, and the food that you put into your body and how it nourishes you or doesn't. So this pandemic hot degree landing in the second house could really feel like it hits you in your core safety. Safety and security are very big themes of this house. Also, possessions. So you might find yourself eating a lot so that you can feel secure. Comfort eating, shall we say. People are baking an awful lot of bread right now. Oh my God, it's kind of hilarious. And I think it would really make sense to not go eating in extremes just because Pluto is passing through your second house. So yeah, food, body, money, it could really transform your relationship with your physical self and help you to settle into your own skin. Julia, what do you think?
Yeah. Pluto also tends to bring a lot of ego where he goes, and in the second house, in the house of possessions, there could also be this sense of like stress, a little bit of ego involvement, a little feeling of scarcity because Saturn is there over your stuff. Like somebody borrows something without asking you, you're like, what? No, like, or all of a sudden, where when you bought a car a year ago and the payments seemed fine then, they don't seem so fine now. Those types of things, just feeling the crunch around all the material things that kind of root you.
Yeah, that feeling of having your money or your possessions move beyond your control, that sounds like it could be a heavy thing. And responding to that in a good way, is its own kind of challenge. Okay, let's look at Capricorn. Of course, with Capricorn, it's going to fall most likely in the first house, although depending on what degree of Capricorn you have rising, it might fall in the 12th, or it might even be ahead in the second. So the first house is the house of self. It's where we discover ourselves mostly through our actions. It's the house of voting with your feet, I like to say, doing the do, walking the talk. And so it is a house of action. It is a house of self. It is a house of boundaries and self-definition. And it is also a house connected with health, most particularly because the ascendant is connected with immunity. And now I want to say that this pandemic hot degree, when I check to see whether a person's chart has any planets aspecting this pandemic hot degree, I use a really small orb of just 5 degrees. Anything beyond 5 degrees, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be such a big deal. But what I'm saying to you now is if your ascendant in Capricorn is, what is it, like 17 to 27 degrees of Capricorn, then you're probably going to feel this very personally, and you should absolutely shore up your immunity. You should absolutely take care of yourself, shield yourself. Do not expose yourself to infection if you can at all avoid it. Julia, what do you think about this house?
Well, this is the house where after Saturn starts getting into this house, it's going to be starting to move into the lower hemisphere of the chart.
True.
So it's bringing its work to your personal life, your inner life, not so much the outside world. So I think that this hot degree is going to have a lot to do with your own personal projects, maybe an ambition around your own personal project, or the sense that there are forces beyond your control that aren't letting you move forward with your personal projects in life. It's also a leadership house. So your own leadership roles, whether they're at work, whether they're in your family, could also kind of feel like they're affected by this or have become more stressful because of it.
So you're saying it could affect your motivation?
Yeah, totally. Your confidence, your sense of identity.
And your sense that your destiny is in your own hands, which is a very first house idea.
Yes.
That you're more, self-driven. Yeah. Okay, let's look at Aquarius. So with Aquarius rising, that places the pandemic hot degree in all likelihood in your 12th house, which is the house of things hidden. And it is ruled by Neptune, so it's a house of dreams and visions, also nightmares and fantasies and delusions. I like to think of the 12th house as governing the atmosphere, the emotional atmosphere of your home of childhood. It's like the air you breathed. It's like water to a fish. The stuff that you didn't see but seeped into you anyway. So Pluto, will have been moving through this house already before Saturn caught up with it, which means that Pluto may be bringing up some stuff that you just were completely unaware of. Things surging up from your unconscious where you just didn't even know you had it in you. And that could be good or bad. And so, as a house of the unconscious, this is an opportunity to transform your relationship to that unknown territory inside you, and to your dreams and your visions, and how you fulfill on those dreams and visions. And so, it's about taking responsibility for dreaming life up to be something better, instead of fearfully fantasizing that it will only get worse, because you might find that your vision has a lot of power right now. What do you think, Julia?
Hmm. I think that when you're having challenging planets cross the 12th house, it's really, they tend to bring tests and lessons in letting go of things.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's this sense that, they're forces beyond my control, but I'm just going to have to let go of this thing that I want to cling on to so much. Maybe a project at work got shot down and you can't go forward with it anymore. And it's just kind of hard to let it go. It's also the house of seclusion. So for an Aquarius rising, which is an extremely social sign, maybe there's this sense that there are forces beyond your control that are making you have to spend more time by yourself than you'd like. When you want to just kind of go out and connect with people. And it can also, I think, bring up a sense of collective guilt, because Aquarius is also a very political, collective-minded sign. Like, am I doing enough for the world? Am I contributing enough for these things which are going on politically, which I agree with, or feeling, I think that it could also bring up collective guilt as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's a tricky one. All right, the last sign is Pisces. That places the pandemic hot degree in the 11th house, which is the arena of groups, community, your tribe, the people of like mind that you feel a sense of belonging with. And this sensation of facing things that are beyond your control and taking responsibility might have to do with standing up to the group. It might have to do with finding the right group to be a part of. It might have to do with supporting the group's agenda, and facing all of the fear that might come with these things. That's a very Saturn, concept, is fear, and being willing to be transformed. What do you think, Julia, about the 11th house?
Yeah, especially being the house of sort of long-term goals, like the goals that you set for yourself 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15. There might be a sense that those are really, really being tested, that they have to be transformed, maybe against what you want them. Like, oh, I really just wanted to go in this direction 5 years from now, and then you find out I've got to pivot. That dream I had has to be kind of altered and transformed in some way, because there's a force beyond my control, and just sort of getting it the way I had planned. And challenges from groups and with friends, for sure.
And this is the house of the internet, and it's the house of social media. And if there's anything that we cannot control anymore, it's that wild horse, the internet. And so, sometimes you might just have to turn off your damn phone, turn off your notifications, and just stop reacting to people on social media. It might be that is the best way to take responsibility. Stop reading the news, perhaps. Okay. Julia, do we want to say anything else here?
No, I think we covered it pretty thoroughly.
I hope that you benefit from this information, that it helps you, it comforts you, it supports you, it gives you some idea of how to handle the situation that you find yourself in. And if you want more, you can just find us at pandoraastrology.com/services and get a reading to find out more about how this lands in your chart. And we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.